They were on. Hello, everyone. How
Hello.
nice to see you all.
You too.
Hi.
Hello. We never really have a good opening to this. It's just
No,
us saying hello.
I know we need a thing. That was almost a thing because we each did our little dance.
Yeah. Also, we tell crappy little small talk jokes that we laugh too much at for the first 5
I
minutes.
quite like the singing thing. I quite like the singing thing because I could do that one.
That's true.
I was good at that. Artie was shit, but I was great.
I'm amazing. I have a voice of an angel.
Listen, first of all, I just want to give a shout out to Label Free Brands for this brilliant t-shirt. Thank you so much. I just picked it up.
Wow.
I was very happy after my my seeing the man himself last week, Mr. Chappelle.
Awesome.
Yeah. Right. So I think there's only one thing we can talk about, really, which is the extraordinary reaction to the BBC expose of
holy crap.
Of let's call it what it is. The scandal, the sexual abuse scandal that the LGBT movement have been sitting on for years. We've been talking about it and reporting on it for years, and suddenly, the BBC has found the courage to actually investigate it. And
suddenly,
course,
in a 6-month suddenly, because apparently it's been sitting already completed this piece for 6 months while the top brass debated whether to run with it or not.
Yeah, and it's probably causing them no end of headaches. And I know that there's a war going on within the BBC with various disgusting, journalists within there trying to suppress the story.
Is it possible that the Stonewall thing had something to do with it? You know, they had quite a lot of scrutiny because of it, and it's possible that they now think, all right, we have to look a bit impartial here. I mean, it could have fed into it. Anyway, I'm glad they published it.
Yes,
but the reaction is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. I think. I'd like to go first, despite it being obvious. The best take because it's the most obvious one, which is this isn't happening. It isn't happening. Lesbians aren't being coerced into sex. But if it was happening, it's because they're bigoted transphobes. And you're like, that is the coercion. You're literally doing it in the same sentence. It's incredible. But if it was happening, it would be really, really bad.
The best example of that is Nancy Kelly from Stonewall. Literally, I mean, as you know, I obviously have my differences with Kathleen Stock, but as she said, saying that lesbians are potentially bigots if they exclude men from their dating pool. If that's not coercion, what is? You know, so it's amazing that they can claim it's not happening while doing it. That's the most extraordinary bit of cultish kind of mindfuckery that they're actually, you know, putting themselves through, because we all know that you know, our position means that you sleep very well at night. You don't really have any problems with your position. You've examined them. You've been told they're wrong by everyone in the world, in the Western world, especially Americans. And you've examined it and you've thought about it and you've read about it and you've realized that you're right. That, you know, that gender critical people are right. But on the other side is just a constant kind of gaslighting, not only of the victims, not only of lesbians, but of themselves. I don't understand how they can live with it, you know?
It's pure emotion over reason, because we've seen this with the We Spa. We've seen this with so many things where these two positions are opposite to each other. Either it's terrible if lesbians are being coerced or raped, but it's never happening, or it's always happening, but that's okay because it's not terrible. These are totally opposite positions, and these people are holding them simultaneously, and it must be crazy making. You know, you used to see this with climate deniers too. They'd say, it's terrible if climate change was happening, but it's not happening. And others are saying it's absolutely happening, but it's not terrible. And they'd switch right from one to the other, you know?
That's right.
I think I was talking about this yesterday. I was thinking about it. It's context-free arguments, isn't it? You can make one point, which in your head sounds reasonable. It's a reasonable argument, but you cannot join it up with any of the other arguments that you're making. Because, you know, there has to be, it's like firewall thinking. There has to be a firewall between each of your arguments. They can't have any communication or any sharing of information with your other points. because otherwise it just doesn't work.
And that's why people like Owen Jones block people so much, because the people he's blocking are basically different parts of his own dormant brain telling him that what he's saying is contradictory and abusive. You know, it's the only way they can survive, really, is by, like, brilliant thing happened with Linda Riley. Linda Riley made the hilarious claim that she runs the biggest lesbian magazine in the UK, I think, or something like this. I think if it is getting any sales, it's only because they've included straight men in their definition of lesbian.
Yeah, it's like when Playgirl wasn't really for girls anymore, and that's why it makes
but she wrote this, and then she hid all the replies from lesbians telling her that she was full of it. You know, I've posted a link already to it, but I'll post it again. So like, just a barefaced lie, and then in all the hidden replies, all the lesbians telling her that how long they've been talking to her, including people who wrote Diva letters, all sorts of things proving she's lying. You know, so
but it has disgraceful. It's been an incredible reaction, hasn't it? I mean, it's like I genuinely don't really mind people making the argument that, you know, a self-selecting survey shouldn't be used in a news article. Although I think that it was more, I mean, this is more of a sort of maybe, let's say, human interest story. I mean, it's certainly not presenting it saying like a full 80% or 56%. It's using 56% in the context of the 80. And I'm perfectly okay with people arguing that shouldn't be used in a news article. However, I really would like some consistency from these incredibly angry people, and really, because it would absolutely suit us if that 40% statistic of trans suicide would never be used again, because that was based on a self-selecting survey of 27 people, 27. You know, I've never seen, I mean, I've seen people from our side saying it, but this is cited by politicians. It was cited by David Lammy, wasn't he? And he didn't even say suicide attempts. He said suicide, actual. And so, you know, some consistency would be really nice, because it would suit us much better.
They can't do that. And this is a good example of, this is the type of thing that if you tweeted to them, they'd block you. But they can't accept that, because one of their biggest negotiating chits is suicide, which they weaponize constantly in the most shameful way. Right.
Yes.
And they so they're never going to admit that their suicide statistics are bogus, because they will they will lose that ability to make that spurious argument. You know, the other thing is that you know, as far as it goes, as far as the numbers go on this and the statistics, I absolutely get what they're saying. But here's the thing. How many lesbians have to be raped for it to be wrong, for these people to admit that it shouldn't happen? This is a book.
Not even, I don't even, like, not even raped, coerced, intersex, coerced. And even just that phrase, you know, like Ash Sarkar said, you know, if you exclude a group of people from your dating pool, like she said, like black women or disabled women or trans women, then then you should examine it. You're a bigot. That is bad enough. That's coercion. That's trying to shame lesbians into having sex. I mean, I bet she's not saying to Owen Jones that he is a bigot for excluding all women from his dating pool.
But Owen Jones pretends he would go out with a trans man, but he wouldn't
go out with actual women, would he? That's bigoted in itself. If you take that argument that you can't exclude a group of people, I don't really care about like the whole trans thing. Like it's you know, it seems to me like I saw somebody. I mean, it was a trans activist on the other side now, just almost saying that being gay is the new recycled homophobia. I mean, it's got incredible. It's just got extreme now, isn't it?
Yeah, this whole thing about how like, oh, I'd have sex with a trans man or I'd have sex with a trans woman. That's such a cheap, lazy thing to say, because you could say hypothetically there could be. I mean, if Ewan McGregor turned out to be female, yeah, I'd absolutely have sex with Ewan McGregor. You know. But like, that's not realistic. Almost, and you know, it's hypothetically possible that there could be a trans man who's just so amazing and charming. I would somehow be able to get over my aversion to, I'm sexually averse to female bodies, and I'm sexually attracted to male bodies exclusively. It's hypothetically possible, but that doesn't mean I don't, that's not relevant, because in the real world, if I'm in a sexual space, I don't want females around, I don't want women watching me have sex with a man. I don't want to have sex with a woman, Yeah.
I mean, I don't find, I'm sorry, I don't find people who are stupid attractive. I just don't find them attractive. So I've excluded stupid people from my dating pool. Does that make me a bigot?
Did you see, was it
I think Aidan Comerford would claim it does.
Lachlan Stewart did a great thread today that was like, if you exclude an entire group of people from your dating pool, such as people under the age of 18, then you're a bigot. If you exclude an entire group of people from your dating pool, such as people who are already married, then you're a bigot. If you exclude an entire group of people from your dating pool, such as convicted rapists, then you're, like you could just take any group of people, put them in a group and say, you're a bigot for excluding them. It's a great thread because it shows how stupid everybody is.
It's ridiculous. But what's interesting is the extreme reactions. It's really, I mean, honestly, if they wanted a story, they couldn't have done better than this, because the extreme reactions are a story in itself, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
It's got a huge amount more publicity, I believe, because there's been so much tweeting on social media. I mean, now there's even a trending, is it cis with a T, where a whole bunch of women are basically telling lesbians that they're bigots for wanting to sleep with trans women.
Yeah. There it
is. There's the coercion all over again. They can't run a story and say there's no coercion, and people saying there's no coercion happening, and then have cis with a T trending.
Yes, which is all about Karen, actually, who has been on fire this week, did a great.
Oh, her video was great.
Oh my God, her video! I've got that song stuck in my head now. That
yes,
Human League song.
Brilliant.
But she also did a tweet that was attacking cis with the T, the hashtag. You're just ripping it apart like this. You're standing with lesbians getting raped. These are straight women saying cross-dressing men have permission to rape lesbians. It's disgusting.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, can I just say something? I just want to say something about the numbers as well. We've known that there have been these stories for years. It's one of the reasons why the LGB Alliance was set up, because lesbians were desperate and Stonewall wasn't listening to them. But a friend of mine in America, I think Kitty, has compiled, can you see that there? Has compiled this book of testimonies from women who have been coerced sexually by trans-identified and non-binary men and stuff like that.
Wow, a book.
Yes, there's about, I think there's about 45, or no, there's about 35 stories in here. And they include cartoons, comics, and essays, poems, everything. So I really recommend this. We'll include the link on how to pick that up, But yeah, so yeah, I mean, it's great. The brilliant thing about this, again, I'm always reminded of Trump, is that once the lie starts to be exposed, they forget which lie is the lie they should stick to, and at the moment they're lying that there's no coercion, and while they're lying about it, they're being coercive. The cis with the T thing is a perfect example. So it's brilliant, really. I mean, in a way, it's getting to the stage where we won't be necessary anymore, guys. We'll be able to just have a blank screen every Wednesday, because it's
the mess they're in, like that.
The mess they're in. They're just.
Oh yes.
It's just taking care of itself,
It is. I think that's true. I think there was another Ash Sarkar tweet yesterday, which was, I mean, she's been great. I'm trying to find it. Oh, here we go.
I love the way her being normal.
It's because of the.
Sorry, I'm just saying. I love the way that Ash Sarkar just behaving normally is just helping us. Sorry. Anyway, go ahead.
But the Novara media thing yesterday, so their channel was taken down, which I don't agree with. It's gone back up, but now she's on a podcast. Oh, she's in Unheard, saying Ash Sarkar, left and right must unite against big tech censorship. So it turns out that aligning with the right is absolutely fine. Absolutely fine, as long as because it's something that's happening to you.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
I love that. That's brilliant. Great. I hope Owen I'm going to have to start another account just so that I can tweet it at Owen Jones when he goes on about us aligning with the right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm really glad to see the BBC. The thing about this piece being run by the BBC is they're waking up that this really is a war. I think the top brass and the editors and the management, they have to take a stand in this, and it is going to be a battle, and it's going to be tough, but they can't ignore it anymore.
Yeah.
The same thing's happening in Canada. The CBC finally ran a piece, the famous one that Margaret Atwood retweeted, by a trans woman who said, trans-identified male, who said, you know, I may be trans, I may disagree on some points with gender-critical people, but the trans activists are taking things too far. They're being too extreme. They're being violent. They're being dangerous. So the CBC finally, the English language CBC finally dipped its toe into this dispute. And obviously they're getting a torrent of pushback. But so far, I think, you know, they're standing firm. And that means management has been listening that there's an issue. And they're finally starting to realize that they have to, you know, this is a serious, serious issue. There's going to be internal conflict around it. But they're journalists and they have to do their fucking job. And they have to get into it, you know. And the top, in Canada, another piece was run by the top non-government news organization, which is CTV News, which is a national television broadcaster. They have a show. It's sort of like BBC Newsnight or whatever it's called. They're the hard-hitting hour-long investigative journalism show. Ours is called W5, and they did a big piece on pediatric transition, and that was moderate in its tone. Yeah.
I heard it was very good though. Billboard Chris liked it, which means it must be pretty.
Yeah, I've only seen some of it, and a lot of detransitioners are saying it was sort of it showed a lot of sides of this. It wasn't a completely scathing indictment of pediatric transition, but it did show that there are issues with it, and that's, you know, yeah.
It's interesting. I met a brilliant woman the other night who knows a lot about this, and I heard. For some reason, I didn't really take it in while we were talking, but it wasn't until I got home that I realized what it meant. And she was talking to me about the effects of testosterone on girls after, let's say, 5 years. It needs to be a while. I think it's 3 to 5 years, you know. But one of the things it does is it brings you into early menopause, you know, or at least it kind of mirrors the effects of early menopause, which means that these girls, their vaginas are drying up, right? And like when you take someone like Freddie McConnell, he's having his second baby after using testosterone. That is not safe for him or the baby, you know, her or the baby, excuse me. And the other thing about all of this is that this atrophy of the vagina, it leads to itching, pain, and lack of sleep. Right? This is none of this stuff. It's stuff that you hear Jolie and Mom explaining when he talks about this stuff, you know. It also leads to early dementia and early death. And the reason she knows this is she said to me, speak to Sharon Davis, and I might see if I can get a few words from her about this. But Sharon Davis pointed out that her competitors who were cheating against her by using testosterone all died young, you know, or went crazy or whatever, you know. This is like this is stuff that you never hear any of this discussed by mermaids, by Jolie and Mom, by Owen Jones, none of these people. And again, I think it's not only because they don't know, it's because they just don't care, you know. So
no, it doesn't help their ideological position, does it? I mean, this was brought up in the Nolan podcast, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
The fact that just more studies, more statistics were necessary, but it was also pointed out that there's a vested interest in preventing them in happening, and you can only wonder why, you know, people want to prevent them from happening because they know that it's not going to go their way. Which is terrible. It's criminal.
This conversation, this whole kind of you know, this whole kind of endorsement of puberty blockers and stuff like this could not happen if the BBC had been doing their job earlier. But for 5 years, it has had a blanket ban on everything. Excuse me. There's been a blanket ban on everything that doesn't go along with the kind of narrative, you know. So it's, I mean, like the reaction that we saw over the last few days is kind of exactly what we expected, really, wasn't it? I mean, this is the ultimate taboo. You are not allowed to talk about rape in LGBT circles. You're not allowed to talk about coercive abuse in LGBT circles.
And I think this gender ideology really does it does show what can happen to, you know, sort of smart, thoughtful, experienced people when they take this on board. Because I'm afraid, you know, Finn McKay, who is a really experienced, well-read, thoughtful feminist who's made some great contributions, was tweeting. I mean, she tweeted out that this might be happening, but it shouldn't be talked about. It shouldn't be talked about because it's it'll be used by the right wing to try and sort of break the community, and they'll pick us off one by one. You know, trans women first, and it is exactly what you've both been saying. You know, Graham, the whole sacred caste thing, like the priests, it can't be talked about. It should be kept in house. You know, they'll just move the priest to another school.
Yeah,
you can't talk about it. And I was absolutely stunned to see that written down.
No, you were astonished, Helen. Astonished.
I'm astonished. Absolutely fucking astonished by it, man.
It's egregious.
I really am.
Egregious.
Really am. But no, I mean, seriously, actually write it down. Yes, I believe you. I believe it's happening, but don't talk about it. Let's keep it in house. That to me was just one of the
shocking.
It's such a shocking moment to see. It's just so true that you simply, this ideology, you just cannot have that integrity that you would have in sort of in every other argument. You can't have it because it doesn't work without it. It doesn't work without dishonesty.
Yeah.
And there's a secondary problem with that too, is that the whole we can't talk about it, which is bad enough. But then their justification for that is that because the LGBT is so oppressed by the Christian right and by the conservatives. I don't think that's true anymore at all. I think gays are in a pretty good position by and large in society. There's more work to be done, but it's on a subtler level. And trans people, there was a great piece in The Critic. It was showing the statistics of trans murder rates across every single European country. And it's like in many countries, not a single trans person has been killed since studies have been undertaken. In Germany, which is like the kinkiest country in the world, famously, it's the land of leather and S&M and cross-dressing. You know, it's where they invented trans in the early 1900s, you know. There hasn't been a single trans person murdered under any circumstances since like 2008 or something. And that doesn't mean that person was murdered because they were trans. It just means a person who happens to have been murdered, who happens to have had, you know, some kind of cross-sex identity. In Turkey, it's pretty bad. You're seeing an average of about 3 a year. And that's one of the more homophobic countries, you know? So you're seeing more trans murder and more trans identity in Turkey because it's a country where that's a sort of an option out of homosexuality, just like you see in Latin American countries and South Asian countries. But anyways, like this foundation of this is we're so oppressed, and we're addicted to that, you know, and that's why they're silencing people, because we're so oppressed. There can be no criticism of transgender anything, even if there are problems with it, because they're just so vulnerable, you know. And
but we said, I mean,
fucking true, you know. Exactly.
No, we talked about this last week, didn't we? It was, I did. I'm going to go back and say the same point again. But it is that idea of, I just want a community. I want a community, so I'm just going to. So I'll identify as trans because it you know, as
exactly.
Debbie Hayton, who said on the Nolan podcast, you know, it has no meaning, and we know it has no real meaning. There's no actual definition. So you can just declare yourself to be trans, and then suddenly you're in a community, and you know that's quite a pull, isn't it? It is quite a pull, especially then if you can declare yourself to be the most oppressed and use it to shout at other people that they're horrible bigots and become sort of a victim.
And to drive actual members of that community out of it. Like, you know, there are, like, a very good example is the LGB Alliance, who are nearly with us, just waiting for Bev to come in. But like maybe Bev is not coming in. I don't know. Maybe Jen can help us with that one. Don't know. Oh, Malcolm's gone now, but they'll be back in a second. But to drive actual lesbians out of the community, you know, it's why. I mean, when was it that the lesbians protested Pride? Was it in the UK? Was it 4 years ago now, something like that? You know,
I think it was 3 or 4. Yeah.
These women were lying down in front, were obstructing Pride because they weren't welcome anymore. You know, and they were just saying, we don't want to have sex with straight men
I know.
Straight
You know, I'm like,
men.
it used to, I mean, and when did some people are gay, some people are gay, get over it.
Yeah.
You know, that seems to have gone away now.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
well,
no,
Nancy,
you can't be gay because that's being a bigot.
Nancy Kelly's.
This is what's happening.
Nancy Kelly's statement.
It's egregious.
Like, imagine actually writing it. Imagine not saying it wasn't as if she said it by mistake. She gave a statement to BBC saying that same-sex orientation was bigoted, was as bigoted as racism. That's what she was saying. That's why I think that we really need to start talking about Stonewall in terms of fraud, right? They have been committing fraud on the UK for years now. You know, the story of how Ofcom dealt with them is perhaps the best example, that Ofcom were upholding complaints and then telling Stonewall about it so that they could get higher on the Stonewall diversity index. It's fraud, and Nancy Kelly and Ruth Hunt should be in jail for what they've done, for how they've betrayed lesbians. They really should. Hey, listen, maybe I'll bring in Kate and Malcolm anyway. And we can get Bev to join in later.
Whilst you're doing that, did you see that the FCA got that John Lewis advert?
Oh, yeah.
They got to take it down, because we were all saying this, maybe, that, you know, they're saying, actually, we don't cover willful destruction, only accidental destruction, and they're going to have to contact everyone who's bought in shoeless from the period that the adverts run to tell them, no, your kids can't willfully break up your house and we'll pay.
Yeah, I love that. They're going to have to do a second ad with a woman just saying, no, don't do that. We're not covered.
That would be brilliant.
Without further ado, let us meet the men and women of the moment, the gayers of the moment, the LGB Alliance. Hello, everyone. How are you doing?
Hello. Hi there.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Artie, Helen, hi.
Hi.
Hiya.
First of all, can I congratulate you on such a brilliant, smooth, beautifully prepared, welcoming, wonderful conference last week. It was an absolute joy.
Thank you very much.
It's all Kate Harris is doing.
Well, yeah. I mean, now you've had, it's been done a week. Have you been, what's the reaction been like? Obviously, you had the usual lunatics, but in general, has it been good?
What struck me most was during after the conference, the people kept coming up to me and very earnestly shaking my hand and just thanking me again and again and again. I don't know how dozens of people through, and it was just quite moving. Some of them seemed just really very moved with the experience, and that really made a big impression on me.
Yes,
yes. That's wonderful.
That's lovely.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And
it's all a blur to me.
Yeah, it was a bit of a wild one.
Well, I'm sorry I couldn't make it there. I really wanted to, but something came up and I couldn't make it. But the sense I got from what I saw online is that it really solidified the positivity behind this. Sometimes it can feel very negative. We're fighting against these terrible news, and we feel like we're really pushing against so many dark forces. But the sense was that this really brought the positivity together and made everybody feel like there's a strong team, and then we've got the wind at our backs. And really wonderful.
I think
it was great fun.
Yeah, I think what Artie said is right, and it's just confirmed that we're here and that we are in our hundreds and thousands and millions around the world. We know that the people at the conference were the tip of the iceberg, but I think that energy and that commitment is just firing us up for what's coming next, not just next year's conference, but all our plans for the next few months. We need to have a little rest for a few days and then just get cracking again, because it was just, I mean, the energy in the room was unbelievable.
Yeah, my favorite moment was showing our tweet of the Prime Minister's letter to Graham Linehan.
Yeah, although there was one point where I was on stage and his face just appeared over me. And I was just like,
It was a joyful moment, wasn't it, Graham?
No, it was lovely. I mean, the thing is, like, I have never been what you would call a natural supporter of the Tories, but it has to be said that on women's rights, they are leagues ahead of the others. And in fact, I think we'll probably stay in power because Labour, the contempt for women is just too strong coming off Labour. It's too much. So I was delighted to see that he endorsed it.
Well, I mean, Tory or Liberal or Lib Dem, he is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. The fact that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, no matter what their party, is giving a formal endorsement, not just as himself, but as the Prime Minister of the country. That's just a huge, I had to tweet that right away for LGB Alliance Canada. The world needs to see that this is a legitimate organization and all the smears are bullshit,
Speaking of which, how is it going behind the scenes on Mermaid's vexatious attempts to get you closed down? Can you talk about that?
You wouldn't want us to discuss a matter that was sub judice, would you?
Oh, is it sub judice?
You wouldn't
So sorry.
want that.
No.
Everything is sub judice. It's terrible. But in general, I would imagine they've got a bit of a. If we could talk in general terms, it seems to me they've got a very, very steep hill to climb.
Yeah, I think we can talk in general terms. It's an unprecedented situation. It's an extraordinary situation. The case, as we have seen it, is extraordinarily lacking in legs. I don't know how to put it any other way.
They are mermaids.
Oh, very good. You see, they practiced this beforehand, Graham.
We've been practicing for hours. But, on a serious note, it's symptomatic of the plague that's sweeping the world of trying by whatever means you can to shut down your opposition. Not to engage, not to discuss the issues, to defame, to lie, to try to do everything in your power to shut that organization out. So we're used to this. We've had, how many days is it now? 730 days, I think, of people trying to close us down. And this is the latest effort. And
it's very It's also that it's targeting lesbians, because it's very clear with the BBC article that there's an absolute frenzy. I mean, this is a story that should have been out there we've been wanting to get out there for years. It's fantastic that it finally got out. But the absolute fury, not that lesbians have been abused or that there might be some abuse. No, nobody's worried about that at all. But the idea that the BBC is actually printing these lesbian stories has aroused extraordinary fury.
Hey, listen, before we move, Malcolm, before you go on, I can't figure out who's doing it, but there's a very clicky sound on one of the mics. Could you just be careful you're not clicking your mic against something? I don't know who it is. It's not Kate, because her microphone is off. Would it be you, Artie? It's a very kind of crackly sound that I'm hearing a lot. But anyway, sorry, Malcolm, go ahead. Yes, Malcolm, it does seem to have stopped when you clicked, but so maybe just keep yours on mute in between.
Okay.
But go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah, the thing that I couldn't understand was why they were all upset, these critics of that article, and yet they didn't, any of them, condemn the likes of Dennis J. Riley or Riley J. Dennis or Veronica Ivy, or all the cited evidence of these people saying it was.
Yeah, he's got slight connection problems. Yeah. No criticism of the people that were doing this at all.
No.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
Yeah. None of them criticized the actual statements that were quoted in the BBC article.
Yes.
That's right.
I can't remember. Did they quote Veronica Ivy's thing that lesbians would learn to cope with penis?
Riley J. Dennis as well.
Yes, and also, can we just remind people that Magdalene Burns was calling out Riley J. Dennis like 6-7 years ago was pointing out that a lot of these kind of coercive behaviors were being exhibited by not just, you know, random Twitter avatars on the internet, but blue ticked, highly influential trans spokesmen. You know, so it's and you know, it made me also wonder how much of what lesbians were going through and reporting back, how much of that led to the formation of the LGB Alliance.
A lot.
Well, I think Kate's the best person to answer that, really.
I mean, this article is another groundbreaker. So, you know, I've said before on sort of in webinars like this, every day is a shock to the system, every day. And it was an enormous shock that the BBC published that, because the journalists have been working on it probably for as long as we've been going. And we've been trying to get the story out for as long as we've been going. Because the one thing that motivates us more than anything is what's happening to young people, and particularly to young lesbians. Yes. So, you know, we couldn't have been more delighted that that story came out. The reaction to it, I'm afraid, just reinforces the fact that there are so many people out there who are either misogynistic by choice or utterly blinded by the nonsense that's coming out. But it's the same if you don't want to sleep with a trans woman, i.e. someone with a penis and male genitals, you're the same as a racist or a fat person. I mean, this is, it's good in a way because it exposes how far off the rails general opinion has gone. And the fact that, you know, certain gay publications who should know better are not remotely interested in the story of the lesbians, as you said. And certain MPs who should know better are jumping onto that bandwagon and supporting them. So in a way, it's good because it illustrates the scale of the problem. But for us lesbians, it is fantastic news to see that story published. You know, if anybody wants to talk about vulnerable communities, I heard you talking before, Artie, about statistics and this myth of the poor, vulnerable trans community. The most vulnerable people, certainly in the world that we're talking about now, are young lesbians.
That's right.
Who are being pushed into having sex, aka raped.
Yes.
Yes.
And yes,
as soon as we start addressing that as a crime and arresting some of these perpetrators, the better.
Absolutely. And some lesbians, young lesbians, are identifying out of lesbiandom and even taking medical transition because of that kind of pressure. And a lot of lesbians are now saying that they want to identify as asexual as a way of escaping the accusations and the rape attempts, because if you call yourself a lesbian, you're going to be targeted by these autogynephilic males who, you know, want to identify as lesbians.
Yeah. There's a Lisa Montgomery, I think her name was. No, am I thinking getting mixed? Lisa Muggeridge, I think her name was. But she used to say she was an expert on social work, and she used to point out that she said something like, if someone in an organization is found to be a groomer, then everyone in that organization will swear blind right up until the handcuffs go on or the cell door closes, that there's nothing this person couldn't be what they're accusing them of. You know, because groomers, they don't just groom the children they're working on, they groom the society around the children. And the thing you see, I think, of all these people who are both, you know, calling lesbians bigots for trying to stand up for their rights and their boundaries, and the same people who are calling you guys a hate group, these are people who have been groomed. They've been groomed. They've actually managed to groom each other a lot of the time, because you see this kind of the repetition of phrases like trans women are women and genital fetishes and all that stuff.
This is a terrible phrase. That phrase is just a terrible. I'm astonished that anyone is prepared to use it. But we saw the same thing when you did her, that sort of thing. You know, where you sort of exposed her.
Oh yes, sorry,
idea. But again, it was that's all there was anger. But this is the coercion, this is the beginning of the coercion that's being exposed in that BBC article. It is, a lesbian dating app full of men.
Yes.
Really.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact,
and people,
someone who recently killed a woman started off on that lesbian dating app, by and calling themselves a lesbian,
Yeah.
So it's as you say, it's just the iceberg, tip of the iceberg, the stuff we've seen.
Yeah. Benji and I got together a few months ago, and Benji for fun decided to install and open up her so that we could look at it together and see what the profiles are like. And the very first profile that came up was a male.
Yeah. No, it's outrageous. Hey, can I just say, while I'm here as a representative of the entertainment world, I'd like to apologize for Matt Lucas's extremely ignorant tweet about you. I've written to him several times asking him to present the evidence that you're anti-trans and to apologize if he can't. He refuses to answer. For some reason, my WhatsApp number for him and my phone number for him is suddenly not working. And I apologize because my belief is that he is trying to deflect and trying to stop from being cancelled for his past use of blackface by attacking you, because the tweet came out of nowhere. It was absolutely unmotivated, and I simply, I wouldn't be able to understand it. That, to me, seems what he's up to. Malcolm, what do you think of it?
Well, I mean, I know we're all supposed to treat celebrities seriously, but I mean, the idea that I or anybody else cares or should care what Matt Lucas thinks on an important political issue. I mean, the goal of it, the sort of arrogance of it, and then to use it to punch down, I mean, it's just pathetic. I think we tweeted that Matt Lucas may not like us, but the father of the house, Peter Bottomley, does. And it was because I just thought, it doesn't matter what Matt Lucas thinks. I mean, it'll really be, it's for our legislators to decide law, and the father of the house, the prime minister, conservative woman, Rosie Duffield. I mean, these are people who are doing serious thinking. Matt Lucas, I mean, I mean, although it's a long time ago, I don't believe anybody around this table would have done the blackface that they did in Little Britain. And I also don't think any of us would have done the ladies, because we would have been embarrassed. Because, we might not think trans women are women in the real sense, but we wouldn't have made fun of trans people, even transvestites, in the way that they did. So they're just embarrassed.
Well, unfortunately, that's immediately Helen, just give me one second. I just got to say very quickly, that's immediately disproven, because I filmed the pilot of Little Britain, and I filmed those sketches with the I'm a Lady. But the thing is, I never thought of I'm a Lady as being about trans people. For me, it was about two very extreme people who were dressed in ridiculously old-fashioned clothes. I never thought of it as a trans thing. I just thought, it was a funny kind of odd joke. But then again, I didn't realize how insane some trans activists were. So there probably are.
And trans didn't used to mean transvestite anyway. I mean, gender recognition.
Yeah.
Let me ask about that.
Can you mute, because you're clicking a lot.
Yeah, sorry. When you're not talking, Malcolm. When you're not talking. I just wanted to say something about that, because I think that's an important point. One of the things, obviously, that is considered, Russell T. Davis made a stupid speech about it, about dropping the T. But the thing that calling yourselves the LGB Alliance does is that it makes it very clear that you are for gay people and bisexuals, and that's it, right? So if, like I often point out to people, trans people are welcome in the LGB Alliance. They just have to be gay.
Yeah, I just want to address this. There's someone in the comments who said, I see Artie is still pro-T. That's so gross and stupid. They're fake. Like, I am not anti-trans, and neither is the LGB Alliance, and neither is anyone else here. We're not pro-trans, and we're not anti-trans. We just acknowledge that trans doesn't mean you have transformed your biological sex. And we have issues about trans activism and gender identity ideology, but we are absolutely pro-human beings, regardless of whether they identify as transgender or transsexual or demigender or whatever the hell. We are humanists at our core, all of us. So this idea that if you're angry at gender identity ideology, you have to hate trans people is starting to take hold in some corners, and I think we need to put a stop to that. The LGB Alliance does not hate trans people. I, Artie Morty, as a human being, do not hate trans people and have many transgender friends. And so I think does everyone here, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well said. Well said.
Yes, well said, Artie. And also, I wanted to add to Malcolm's point earlier about.
Yes, sorry, Hannah.
No, that's okay. I just, although I was slightly taken aback by your admission there, that was quite amusing. But also, you know, that's that sort of thing. I did used to take umbrage to it, but not because I thought, you know, people were taking the piss out of trans women, because they were taking the piss out of women. You know, no, but seriously, like, you know, just like the sort of the pantomime dame thing, you know, just extreme sort of parodies of women and sort of mincing around in high heels with lots of makeup. You know, I've always found that offensive towards women, to be honest.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to say.
But let me just quickly ask about the importance of spaces for LGBT people. I mean, we know, for instance, that in California there's no such thing as a lesbian-only space. They've all disappeared. Is there anything that the LGB Alliance will be doing to try and promote the existence of these real-world spaces, not just online?
Well, many things. I mean, the very first thing that we plan to do is to set up an online resource. And you're clicking again, Malcolm.
You're clicking, Malcolm.
It's because
he's got a chicken.
He's got a connection problem and he's on his phone. But to set up an online and phone resource for young people, not just lesbians, but also young teenage boys who are struggling with their sexual orientation. Because it's really important that they have a resource like this. At the moment, everybody who is struggling with their sexual orientation gets channeled into resources that are largely based on gender identity, and that's really, really a problem. And we also have plans for, maybe you'd like to talk about your plans for culture, Kate?
Yeah, I want to sort of answer this in two bits, Graham. First of all, it's easy to think that LGB Alliance is a highly professional organisation with a big staff and lots of money. In fact, as our Kiwi friends say, we operate on the smell of an oily rag. In my dreams, we will be opening a lesbian nightclub next week.
Yeah.
In my dreams, we will be opening a club for young people who want to mix with other people who are biologically sure of their sex and who think they may be lesbian, gay, or bisexual. In reality, next week, we're looking at our situation in a court case where another charity is seeking to strike us off the charitable register. We're looking at fundraising. We're looking at employing full-time staff because we're all volunteers. Because we've been, beaten up every day for 2 years, we aren't as powerful and well-resourced as we may appear.
Somebody referred the other day to our switchboard operator. That really made me laugh. You know, the switchboard operator.
So there is a gap between theory and practice. But as Bev says, we have got big plans. We want to be a multi-million-pound organisation within 18 months. And the first thing we're doing is this helpline. We know it's needed because people ring us, young people ring us, parents ring us, help, where can we go? So we know there's a crying need for a helpline. We know there's a crying need for a creative studio to start producing videos and to start producing stuff that we can put on YouTube and TikTok that says being a lesbian is fantastic. Don't let anybody tell you a lesbian has a penis. That is a man. Very simple messages like that we can get out to combat this stuff that is battering young lesbians, saying, you know, you are a transphobe. Well, we know all about that from the BBC article. But at the heart of everything we do will be culture, because we miss that as gays and lesbians. We absolutely miss what we used to call our own culture. And, you know, whether you're going right back to the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, we had something. That's all gone now. So we have to rebuild that. But even before we get to that, there are much more serious threats. And that's why I don't give a monkey's about what somebody like Matt Lucas thinks. I do give a monkey's about what somebody like Boris Johnson thinks.
Yeah.
And the difference is very clear. We have a battle coming up about conversion therapy. Everybody knows this is a non-issue. Going to any gay or lesbian club, what's top of your mind? It isn't conversion therapy. There is no evidence to suggest that this is a problem for gays and lesbians. This is a Trojan horse purely to get the 2 words gender identity on the statute book. This has been done successfully.
Well, also, it's one of the main issues in which words have been sort of turned upside down and inside out so that nobody knows what they're talking about. Because, of course, the real issue of conversion therapy that we do, we're profoundly worried about is 15-year-old girls who say that they're boys. And who are put on a route to having their breasts removed and having beard growth and eventually becoming sterile. I mean, that is the sterilization of lesbians. That's real conversion therapy. But the way it's presented is actually upside down and back to front. And the 99% of the public do not understand this issue. And you know, whenever I try to explain it, it takes me literally. I've timed it 8.5 minutes to explain it. And so usually, if I've only got 5 minutes, it just doesn't work.
Yes, it's so extraordinary to try to explain it because there's so much language unpacking that needs to be done. It's really fiendishly clever for them to use the language of conversion therapy to push this agenda forward. It's really sinister.
I haven't considered the angle of actually getting the term gender identity on the statute books. I think that's an incredibly important point, which hadn't occurred to me. But I think you're right. And that is really dangerous. That this has to be opposed, doesn't it? Yeah. For that reason alone.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because Kate says this every single week and nobody really picks it up. Nobody really understands what's going on. It's really difficult to explain.
Yeah, there's a really good point about getting the language in the books because Bill C6, the language actually establishes the sentence. Gender identity is innate and unchangeable as a matter of fact, and it is a myth that it is not. That is
unless you're gender fluid, Artie. You might be gender fluid. You might be gender queer.
Rebutting is like that means gender fluidity isn't real. Are you banning that from existence? You know, but they're literally establishing in law that gender identity is a thing that is real, that is innate.
So our job over the next few months is the boring work, the writing lots of letters, the campaigning, because if we make gender identity legally recognized, it opens the way to self-ID. And that is what the conversion therapy bills around the world are for. It is nothing to do with gender conversion therapy. So we have to do the boring work of explaining this to people. Gender identity is a feeling. Have that feeling, have that belief, but it has no basis in law and no place on any statute book of any government with a brain. So that's why it's important that we focus on our duty to lobby politicians not to suck up to mad celebrities who don't know what they're talking about.
One of the things I think would be good to do. People are talking about this in the comments, and it's something that came up at the conference. The concept of language and pronoun use and all that sort of thing. One of the things that I think would be really great to do is to try and pin people down on what they mean when they say the word trans. Because I think a lot of the confusion comes out of the creation of a group that exists, but not in the way that people think it exists. In other words, personally, I don't think a cross-dresser is trans. I think the only people I think are trans are transsexuals. But by that I mean that they have had surgical intervention.
Well, that's only about MTF. That's only about 16% of MTF.
Exactly, and that's the thing that I don't think people understand. I don't think they understand that the vast majority of people who are claiming a trans identity are fully intact males.
Well, that's why when that YouGov poll was taken, and you asked people whether they were happy about MTF people using women's spaces, you had a certain percentage percentage who thought that was fine. And then you explained that these were people who were actually male-bodied and hadn't done anything to them, and that the statistics were completely different. So it's a question of definitions again and again, and that's not just the word trans, but also the word gender. People don't know what they mean half the time.
Absolutely.
You know, all the and conversion therapy, as we were just talking about. There is a whole abuse of language going on. Which is, I think, quite deliberate, and it's a kind of, I described it myself as a kind of fog, a language fog in which you can insert some really weird ideas into law.
Yes, well, and I think it's a language fog in which people with gender dysphoria can fulfill a fantasy that is not possible. You can't literally change sex, but if you fog the language, you can convince yourself that you have. You know,
and I think a lot of this is because people spend so much time online that they become sort of disconnected from their bodies, and they have these sort of virtual anime avatars, and they live out their fantasies online and sort of get dissociated from their bodies.
Yeah, they're dissociated from the material world. Everything's virtual, and that makes this even harder still, because people are seeing, they're seeing, even bystanders are seeing that maybe it's not that big a deal that your material reality is that you're male, but that you claim to be a woman. You know, there's sort of sense that they're sort of devaluing material reality because everything's virtual now. You know,
but the question is, and I can see it popping up in the comments. What can we do? And
good. That saves me from wrapping it all up. Yes. What can we do? What can we do?
All right. Kate's going to explain exactly what we have to do.
What can we do? What we can do is to stand up and speak, challenge.
Yes.
Every time somebody says something that you disagree with, challenge them. You can do it in a pleasant way. You can be polite. You can be perfectly civil, but without dialogue, we're not going anywhere. At the moment, it feels almost as if we're in a state of war. And that's a frightening thing to say. But the damage cannot go on for another generation. We have to stop it now. We've seen enough people, enough young people whose lives have been ruined. We've seen the detransitioners. If you care about this, speak up. Speak up at work. You have the forced out of judgment now behind you. If in doubt, ask for help. You can contact us and we'll do our best. But fundamentally, the next big campaign is going to be around the conversion therapy bill. So we're going to ask you to write letters, and that's really boring. Another thing that you can do, and this is very easy, is get a piece of paper and an envelope and write to number 10, whatever you think about Boris Johnson in other areas, if you please write to him and thank him for standing up for LGB Alliance. That will help us survive. And our survival is not secure. So anything you can do in terms of writing letters to number 10 and getting ready for the conversion therapy bill and challenge, that's the way we win.
Yes. And also I would remind people that if you were asked at work to put your pronouns in your signature, you were being asked to go along with essentially a religion that you don't agree with. So feel free, do challenge that too, because it's those little things that will eventually help. And as Kate points out, because of Maya, they can't come back at you. They can't do anything to you. Your beliefs.
And Graham, something really, really important, which I'm so sorry I haven't mentioned, is the GRA in Scotland. That is terrifying. We've already challenged that once. We challenged it 2019 to 2020. It's back, and we have to challenge it again. So let's not forget Scotland, and let's not forget the LGBTQIA+ action plan in Wales. We're fighting on all fronts, but we can do it together because reason is on our side.
Well, it certainly is. And when we see, I think when people have heard that the Scottish Government decided to drop the word mother from its maternity bill in response to certain demands, that I think they realise what's at stake. And so people are, I think, much more alive to the issues now than they were a year ago.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a brilliant place to be, and I'm delighted that you've helped us get here, Bev and Kate and Malcolm,
Malcolm says he sends his best wishes, but his connection was so poor and his clicking was so annoying that he decided to stay away.
That is absolutely fine. That is totally Malcolm, thank you so much, and hopefully we'll get you back when you're near a laptop. Lovely to talk to you as always. I was absolutely honored to be a guest at the conference, and I can't wait for the next one. God bless you, and thank you for everything you're doing.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Wonderful
much,
pleasure to have
all
you
of
on
you.
again.
Thanks.
Thank you for
Thank you.
having
Cheers.
us on.
Speak to you soon. Bye-bye, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
That was a joke.
Remember on Wednesday when I was saying we are the grown-ups? We're not. They're the grown-ups.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I wanted to say sorry for talking over you there, Helen, but I was so scared that I would forget.
No, you were right. You had to get that out.
I just thought,
Had to
oh my
come
God.
clean, man.
He said, no one here would do a joke about women dressed as, my God, that's most of my career. You know? That was a really good one. And that kind of reminded me of why I love doing this show. So, thank you so much for.
But also, do you know, I think one more thing that we can do, because I thought that was an incredibly important thing. You know, they have all sorts of plans, brilliant plans. That helpline is such a good idea.
Yeah.
But what they're actually having to do, spend their time fighting like Goliath, like the Good Law Project, Mermaids, who've got hundreds of thousands of pounds behind them. They're having to do that instead of this really good work that they want to do. It's terrible. These people are preventing this from happening.
Yeah,
so when people say, what have they done for gay people? That you tell them, you're in the way.
Yes,
Yeah,
very good point. And also, if you're out there and you can actually, I'll speak about this in a sec. Before we go, I'll just don't worry about that. But if you're out there and if you can bring any of your skills to helping the LGB Alliance, please do get in touch with them. They need a switchboard operator first of all. So
and a switchboard.
And a switchboard. So bring that. Listen, let me just talk a little bit about Matt Berry. I phoned Matt Berry did a piece for did an interview with Vulture, and he distanced himself from the episode of the IT Crowd, and he distanced himself slightly from me. But I called him about it, and please don't be angry at Matt. He's working for Disney. He's in a bit of a weird position. They put him in a corner. His
comments did seem a little bit like forced and a little bit tepid. It was just kind of like, yes, I don't agree with that kind of.
Well, it's basically these journalists, they act as kind of witch finders, so they were doing the pricking test to see if he would bleed, so I wouldn't be too angry at Matt. Matt is away with the fairies. He's a musician and an actor, one of the best and funniest men I've ever worked with. But he's away with the fairies. He's not following this subject. I wrote to him and I sent him examples like the cotton ceiling stuff, and I said you really should be paying attention to it. And I gave a quote to the Independent for their follow-up article, which they didn't run, of course, because I mentioned the coercion of lesbians, the medicalization of children.
Well, I hope he takes note, though, because it still matters. It still matters, because if people say these things and then they don't take note when somebody like you will actually sort of get in touch with them and say this is the problem, then it does do damage, really. Yeah,
well, I mean, with Matt, I'm giving him another go, because he kind of as I say, he's a musician and he's hilarious. He doesn't know what's going on. I mean that in the nicest possible way.
Well, it's giving you the opportunity to tell him.
Yeah, I'll tell you what was nice. Called him, and there was no coldness, no distance. We were just as much friends as we always were. So I'm delighted about that. That'll do me. Listen, guys, great show. Anything else you want to talk about before we go? Anything on your minds?
Well, I'm going to the the Women's Place UK event tonight. At Women's Place is not in prison, up in central London. So if anyone is going, I'll be leaving in a minute.
Are you
going,
going
at the bar? Yeah, I'm going up. I'll be at the bar in about an hour and a half.
Yes,
where is it?
Can't say. Central London.
Oh, okay, in London. Okay.
Venue released only to those people going.
Wow, isn't that fucking extraordinary? That
fucking
feminists have to do that. Fuck you, lunatics. Not you guys. The lunatics. Thank you so much, everyone. Great show. Very happy with that one. We will see you very soon. And
see you soon. Bye guys.
Like and subscribe.